Welcome back, minors. My name's Amber Johnston, and I'm a counselor here at Student Wellbeing.
My name is Tracy Kriegel. I'm a counselor here at Student Wellbeing as well. It's time for your morning cup of joe.
So, Tracy, have you ever heard the backstory of Lilo? You know, from Lilo and Stitch? She has what I would arguably call the most tragic backstory of all of the Disney princesses. Actually, I don't even know. Is Lilo really a Disney princess? Let's just kind of assume she's one of the most tragic heroes in Disney. And that's saying a lot given the sheer number of orphans that are in Disney, just like saying that she's pretty tragic. You have Cinderella as an orphan, Snow White's an orphan, Simba, Anna and Elsa, Tarzan, Coda and Brother Bear, Bambi. And then you have Lilo, and her story is just a whole lot more tragic.
That's a lot of people in Disney that's got a lot of stories, isn't it?
Right. There seems to be a huge theme of orphans and tragedy in the back pieces of these happy Disney movies.
Right, yeah. And you got to really be watching to kind of catch that, don't you?
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things that's interesting about Lilo is that it is so tragic, but it's glossed over. And so if you aren't really paying attention to what's happening behind this in the undercurrent of the story, then you miss it. So what makes Lilo so much more tragic than the other characters? Well, we kind of have to go back and start with a little bit of backstory for those of you who haven't seen the films. And many of you may have seen it and missed this. So don't worry, I'm not going to spoil anything outside of maybe the first 5 minutes of the show.
Thanks, Amber. We all appreciate that. Don't have any spoiler alerts there, right?
No spoilers. This is all in the intro music as the movie starts and the maybe first 5 minutes.
Good. I appreciate you bringing this one because, we all want to be in Hawaii right now, laying on the beach because it's summertime. So what a great podcast to be bringing forward right now.
Right. So Lilo is a 6-year-old girl from Hawaii who lost her parents to a car accident, and she's being raised by her 19-year-old sister. Lilo is shown in the first scene of the movie while the kind of intro back music is playing, and she's swimming in the ocean, and she's feeding a sandwich to a tropical fish.
Feeding a sandwich to a tropical fish? What?
Well, if you don't really pay attention, you kind of miss the fish. He's very much on the bottom part of a screen, swimming with the sandwich in his mouth. So you kind of don't really realize at first what she's doing. You just see her swimming in the ocean with this happy music playing in the background.
Got it. Kind of where we all want to be right today.
Right? That would be a wonderful place to be, just out enjoying the sun.
Mm-hmm. Right. Where we all want to be.
So this kind of sets the scene for Lilo as a character. Lilo is seen as being a little bit eccentric. She's considered odd, and she ends up, and as this scene comes to a close, she's running half dressed to her hula class, where she explains to her instructor that she is late and wet because it's Thursday and she has to feed Pudge the fish a peanut butter sandwich because Pudge controls the weather.
Mm-hmm.
She gets really upset at this point and explains how when she went to go make the sandwich that morning, they were out of peanut butter and her sister wanted her to feed Pudge a tuna sandwich.
I can hear her saying that right now. A tuna sandwich.
Do you know what tuna is? It's fish.
That's great.
So the audience is laughing. You can't help but laugh because it's this little girl and she's so upset at this very excitable and passionate young girl, upset that her sister dare suggest that she feed a fish sandwich.
Yeah, that's not happening.
Well, but ironically, most fish eat fish.
True. Yeah, isn't that weird? Fish flakes for fish, shrimp for fish. Who decided that, right?
Well, some of those, you've got seaweed eating fish, and then you have fish eating fish.
Right,
I assume.
I guess when you think about it, the shark has to prey on the smaller fish. So that's normal, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But what's easily missed in this scene is the undercurrent of what's being said.
Right.
Pudge, Lilo believes, controls the weather.
Yeah.
And you see the important key part to this is talked about a little bit later in the movie. And again, this is just a one-off line that if you don't catch it and put the pieces together, then you miss it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that her parents died during a storm in a car accident.
Oh, okay. Putting the pieces together here.
Right. So what we figure out is that Lilo believes that if she doesn't feed Pudge the fish a peanut butter sandwich every Thursday, somebody else could die, like her parents. She believes that she is keeping people safe by feeding Pudge a sandwich. And that's why she gets so upset, because this is a matter of life and death for her. Mm-hmm. And instead of just being a funny, eccentric little girl feeding a fish a peanut butter sandwich.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure for a 6-year-old girl.
Absolutely. And realizing that kind of takes the quirkiness out of her getting so upset about being the peanut butter sandwich, right? She's no longer a little girl being upset about something that's just, a cute little, ha ha ha. Now we're talking about real trauma.
Yeah.
Because she's a 6-year-old girl who's lost both of her parents.
Yeah, that's hard.
And it's this fish, she believes if he's not happy, he could cause another bad storm. And that's a huge pressure.
Yeah. And who wants to be in a huge storm in Hawaii?
Right.
Yeah. Those waves are pretty big.
Well, yeah, not to mention hurricanes and such.
Yeah, we don't have to worry about that in Missouri.
This is true.
Yeah.
So, Tracy, how do you think that somebody can form a belief like that, an irrational belief, like Lilo with believing a fish controlled the weather, or somebody else might have a belief that their gym socks, if they wash their gym socks, that their favorite team will lose the game.
Right. So she's young; she's 6 years old, but it's irrational thinking, and it's a cognitive distortion. It's just believing something that's not, real. But it's something that every human being does. It's that cognitive, distorted thought in the mind. So it's coming from the irrational thought side, coming from not being in the rational side of the brain to the irrational side of the brain. So yeah, that's difficult because, you wouldn't think a 6-year-old could formulate that type of thought, but here's a perfect picture of it. So.
Well, we look to try to make connections between things to find out reasons why something happened. Yeah. So likely she's 6 and she's looking for a reason why her parents died. Yeah. And so she's hunting around and in reality, is there a reason why her parents died?
Yeah, no. She's trying to put a connection there, and so there's a blame. There's a place of connection that she's placed it on, and so she's thinking the weather had something to do with it.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, and if you've got nobody to blame, then it feels harder because I don't have any place to assign the blame. This is the person or thing that caused, this bad thing to happen to me, and having somebody or something to blame for it makes it a little bit easier because then I have control. That peanut butter sandwich gave Lilo control. If I feed Pudge the fish this peanut butter sandwich, then I can prevent the bad thing from happening again. Think about how that feels as opposed to here's this bad thing that happened that I can happen at any time in the future and I have no control over it.
Right. And there's that fear. There's that underlying fear that what if it happens to someone else?
Right.
Yeah, because death is a forever thing.
Right.
And she's afraid that's going to happen to someone else in her life.
Right. And she's got so few people left in her life that it becomes all the more important because we've got to protect what we have in order to make sure that we don't lose any more family members, that we don't, and the peanut butter sandwiches and Pudge the fish give her a measure of control.
Sure.
So let's talk about what I like to call the why bucket. When something bad happens, we want to know why it happened. And this could be anything. It could be the death of a loved one, or a partner having an affair, someone ending a relationship. We want to know why. And so some people can become preoccupied to the point of obsession. You see this a lot in relationships that have broken up. Why did she break up with me? Was she seeing somebody else? Why did he do this? Why did he do that? And so people try to figure out the reasons, the same way that Lilo did. I'm looking for a reason why this happened. The problem is the why bucket has no bottom. So I pour all this stuff into the why bucket, and it just comes right out the other side. And the more you try to fill it, never fills up. Instead, it just creates more questions. Because we can't put ourselves into somebody else's head and know what their thoughts and their feelings are.
Yeah, I think I would add to that, why did I fail this test? Why did my professor make that decision? Why did we have a quiz today? Why can't I get this project done, at this particular time? Why am I procrastinating? Why can't I sleep?
Right.
Why am I so anxious? I hear students say things like that all the time.
Right.
And sometimes, we can't predict why the professor had a quiz today. We can't predict, some of these things, but yet there's all these questions that we have. And so, sometimes there's answers to those things. We can track it back, and answer some of those things. But like you said, the why bucket sometimes is endless.
Well, there's the difference between the why bucket and assessing after something happens. Like, say you have a relationship breakup and you want to assess what went wrong with the relationship. That's you looking at your own actions and your own role. The why bucket, the danger of the why bucket is we are trying to get into the head of another human being or to understand something that has no logic or control behind it, like the weather. And so when we have something that's out of our control, or we're trying to be psychic and understand another person's thoughts, there's never an answer there. And I always ask my clients, is there ever an answer that's going to be good enough? Like, if somebody came up and told Lilo why her parents died, would that ever be good enough? Would she feel satisfied with that? No. If somebody came up and explained why their partner cheated, would that ever be good enough? Is there ever a good enough reason? And there isn't. And so when we put the stuff in there, we hope, the idea is that if I get the answer, I will feel better. But we never do, because the why bucket has no bottom. And that's the problem with the why bucket. And so to create closure, sometimes our brain creates this magical thinking justification, like it did with Lilo, and it gives this form of these irrational thoughts and superstitions and things.
Right. Which comes back to those cognitive distortions, that magical thinking.
So what do we do with this information? Like, because this is kind of an interesting topic. Like, what do we do with this? So what we would do in this situation is come back and try to find a way to find our own closure without the why bucket. So like I talked about, having that difference between assessing and the why bucket, we come back and assess, and we look at our own actions and the own things that we have control over, because we have a circle of things that are within our sphere of control and our sphere of influence. And those are the things that we can change the actions of. And are there going to be things that have no rhyme or reason? Absolutely. Are there going to be things that we have zero control over? Of course. But what can I control? And not in a Pudge the fish and peanut butter sandwiches way. But what could Lilo control in that situation? Like, she could strengthen the relationships that she has. She could find ways to honor her parents. And she does. She does that through pictures. She does that through a relationship with her sister. She does that through developing a relationship with Stitch. And so it's pulling in the areas that we have control over and developing those, and letting go of trying to predict the reasoning behind things that are, frankly, have no reason.
Yeah, those are good. That's great, Amber. One of the things, like when I a lot of times work with clients, I have a worksheet that I give them that's called 10 Ways to Untwist Your Thinking, because sometimes our thoughts do get distorted and they get twisted around. And so when our thoughts become irrational, it's working through that and helping us challenge our thoughts. Because we do get distorted thinking sometimes. And so it's trying to figure out, what's the evidence of my thought? Is this true? Is it not true? How do I change this thought? How do I challenge that? If my best friend was thinking this way, what would I tell them? A lot of times, when we're thinking something, we have a hard time working through it. But if we were to tell somebody else, give them advice, a lot of times we can help them work through it. But when it comes to us, it's hard for us to work through that thought. So, challenging those irrational thinking, whether it's magical thinking or whether it's, jumping to conclusions or personalizing it or labeling ourselves, there's ways to work through those things. So I think that's important for people to understand.
Right. And there's a lot of different models that we can use. The one that you mentioned is definitely one of them. And if you find yourself having these thoughts where you find, I've got my Y bucket out and every time I turn around, I'm putting something in a Y bucket, talking to somebody can definitely help arrange strategies to combat that. So we're always up here up in student well-being. You can always schedule an appointment and we can work through some strategies to try to stop throwing things in the Y bucket.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a course on Canvas, the CBT 101 course, which is great. That's got a lot of information in there that people can take. Which I think has a lot of information in there that can help people work through those thought distortions as well, which would be helpful with that Y bucket.
Yes.
Too. Yeah, absolutely. So very good information. Thanks, Amber.
Okay. Well, you guys have a great week and we will see you next time.
Take care, miners.
For more information about mental health and wellness, contact Student Wellbeing at 204 Norwood Hall. And you can also give us a call at 573-341-4211.
The song Happy Days is brought to us by music from www.free-stock-music.com. You can also add and follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook using our handle at S&T Wellbeing.